welcome Nash-Jones.
Thank you, and thank you very much for inviting me to come to Malmesbury. I don't think I've ever been here before, but I'm very impressed by the beautiful architecture. I think we actually drove up a cobbled street on the way here, and there are lovely little cottages on the way in. Now, we're standing here in the Wesley Room, which I believe is named for John Wesley, one of the great theologians, part of our rich Christian heritage. Now, the church, some would say, is one of our finest institutions, but it had to go through a period of reformation and to modernize and to come in line with some of our modern ways of viewing things. Now, some would say Islam also needs such a reformation, but I'll leave that topic for another day. But what I'm going to talk about is one of our great institutions, another one, the House of Lords. And that clearly needs to modernize and adapt to the times we live in. Now, why would I say such a daring, brash and outrageous thing? Because nearly 2 years ago, I presume the majority of people here did, because you're politically minded, voted in the EU referendum. Now, that was one of the biggest mandates ever in the history of our nation. There was a high voter turnout, one of the highest ever, and 51% of us clearly voted to leave the EU. But the House of Lords think they know better than us. They're currently full of people put there by the likes of David Cameron and Tony Blair, those globalist postmodernists who love the EU, and they were put there because they donated money to those parties. It's basically a house of rich lobbyists which doesn't understand the real people of this country. They think they know better than us, they think we're stupid plebs, and they think they must decide for us. And to them we say no. We won't let them tell us what the destiny of our nation shall be. Now, 180 years ago, from around the country, including here in the southwest of England, Chartists gathered and they marched up to Westminster and they hammered to the door a piece of paper, the People's Charter, for which my organisation is named, to say that the working people should have the vote, that we will not be silent, we will not be quiet, and we will not be ignored. Our voice matters. Pleb votes count. Now, the House of Commons at the moment has 650 members. It's smaller than the House of Lords, which has 797 members. That doesn't feel right to me. Why is the democratically elected House, the one we choose members of, smaller than the one we have no say in? That is not in the spirit of the Chartist, and the House of Lords in its current form must die. We must remove all of these non-hereditary peers. They are not part of the aristocracy. It's nothing to do with our rich history. They've merely been put there because they propped up people like Tony Blair, who went into Iraq and butchered innocent people. Now, if these people were supposedly positioned there due to their experience of life, to give advice back to the community, to give something back to us, why do they ask us to pay them? Why is this a gravy train? They should do this pro bono as a favour to the community, because most of them are wealthy anyway and they don't need us to pay them. Now, I'm going to quote now the words of Oliver Cromwell, and I've been told off for quoting these at a different event before, but I think that's even more of a reason to read them out now. In 1653, on April the 20th, Cromwell, who had eventually removed the king's head, went on to refer to the Parliament as sordid prostitutes. Now, this was not something of a carnal nature. He was referring to the moral bankruptcy of these people. And the words he uttered apply just as much now to the House of Lords as they did to Parliament back then, when he said, "It's high time for me to put an end to you sitting in this place, which you have dishonoured by your contempt of all virtue, and defiled by your practice of every vice. Ye are a factious crew, and enemies of all good government. Ye are a pack of mercenary wretches, and would like Esau sell your country for a mess of pottage, and like Judas betray your God for a few pieces of money. Is there a single virtue now remaining amongst you? Is there one vice you do not possess? Now those people then, as he pointed out, were concerned with a few pieces of money, with lining their own pockets and not with what is morally right. They weren't concerned with what was good for the people. They are enemies to democracy, as is the majority of the Lords today. And what we must do is make sure that our House of Lords only has hereditary peers. All non-hereditary peers must go, and they must be positioned more in number than them of elected senators who can represent the regions of our country. That way we can make sure this House does not go against the will of the people, but we have a say in who sits there. That's a healthy compromise rather than abolition. We allow for the hereditary peers to stay, we allow for that heritage to be there, we show respect to the Queen, but at the same time we have control of that House. Now I've brought with me, I should have ironed it, but here is a Welsh flag. Oops, sorry, I'm part English and part Welsh, so this is one of my flags. And at the moment we have a Welsh Assembly, where people living in Wales can vote on the future destiny of this nation. And what I want to know is, where is the English Assembly? Where is the English Parliament? Don't English people matter? Clearly this is nothing more than Anglophobia, which I noticed the leaflet says I campaign passionately against. Now, I've looked at the USA, and at the moment, as you probably know, they have 50 states. Their population's 5 times the size of us. So by simple mathematics, surely we should have 10 states. We currently have 12 regions of the UK. Now, I know these are partly decided by the EU, and I would question the border of them. But really, we need to start letting those regions have more say in what happens in our country, to consider people on a local level, especially people in the north of England who don't feel represented by posh people down in Westminster, the liberal elite who don't understand the working man. I'd also think we should consider having, I believe there's a Wessex regionalist movement, and I think having a parliament in Wessex would be a wonderful idea. So we could have that based in Winchester, the original capital of England, where people actually still speak English, where English people still live, if I can dare say that. And there, under the feet of King Alfred, we could have a genuine English parliament, where there might be a degree of patriotism. Now, I thought, Martin, can you bring that flag up? To those in Westminster clearly out of touch with the working man, we need now to send a very clear message, as did the American colonists back in 1776. We will not let the Queen, the government, or any of these politicians continue to ignore the will of the people. We voted for Brexit. That clearly must happen. And anyone who gets in our way, be they landed gentry, be they lords, whoever, must go. To them we say, do not tread on us.